So, okay, so I just want to welcome everyone. I'm Jill Phillips with the Washington Studio School, and we are pleased to have you join us at another edition of our Artists in Conversation series tonight. It's during this August of lots of free programming at the school. And we're very excited about this one because it's from a completely different perspective than the others. These online conversations, which started at the beginning of the pandemic, have been wonderfully inspiring, unmoderated, and very, very natural conversations, usually between two painters. And some of them have known each other really well, like Susan Yanero and Deborah Kahn a couple months ago. And others have known each other's work, but they haven't necessarily met before the planning of this conversation, like Reem Bassus and Catherine Sulan-Mann. They've all been fascinating. And all we do is introduce them, and then we disappear. And the format and the dialogue is completely up to them until we come back at the end for a question and answer period. These conversations and other free programming at the school have been made possible by generous support from the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, the Joanne Burgess Shorey Legacy Fund, and many, many individual donors. And as always, we want to express our heartfelt thanks and great gratitude to all of them tonight. As mentioned earlier, the conversation tonight is from a very different perspective. It's from the viewpoint of the model stand. With the beautiful exhibition up at the National Gallery here in Washington, DC, of Whistler's paintings of his model, Joanna Heffernan, we've been thinking a lot about the collaborative aspect of the model and the studio artist and the artistry of both. The global pandemic changed so much in our lives and connected us all in very new and very different ways. And one thing I can say personally as a teacher and an artist is that my whole viewpoint on how to work with models has shifted dramatically as a result of these past 2.5 years. So when the DC Art Model Collective formed in 2020 and got themselves online, it was a lifesaver for us as a school that has such a big focus on the figure. And models everywhere really did the same. And we were able to see, when left to their own devices, and I use that word intentionally and pun intended, just how brilliantly creative and artistic a good model is. The viewpoints and the lighting and the setups and their cats and their birds and their spaces have been breathtakingly inspiring. Things that could just never happen in the classroom, like a view from above with the, within the shaped confine of a bathtub, were suddenly possible. And somehow the emotional, the emotion of the pose and the connection just still conveyed even through the computer screen. So tonight we're going to hear from 3 of the DC area's fabulous models about life before and during the pandemic, and about the model artist collaboration, about working in schools versus working with professional artists, and lots more. And I'm going to introduce them by first name only for their safety and their privacy. Many of you probably have worked with them a lot. Who are in the DC area, and maybe not in the DC area because they're online all the time now. So Sarah has been modeling for 20 years. She has a full-time job managing a frame shop and an art gallery, in addition to being the devoted mom of 3 cats. As both an artist and a model, she has enjoyed the creative opportunities that virtual sessions have offered. Jalene has been a professional model since she moved to Denver after finishing college, and thought modeling would be a good way to connect with the art community in her new city. Little did she know that modeling would become an amazing part of her creative and artistic life for over 20 years and counting. And Sheba has been modeling professionally in the DC community for over 12 years. She is a longtime cat mom and recent human stepmom. Modeling is not her only creative passion. She finds creative fulfillment in her own photography as well. And we at Washington Studio School are lucky that she has recently joined our staff as well. These 3 models represent so many incredible models in the DC area and around the world who inspire us and make the collaboration possible. We receive what they give and respond to it. And the the connections can be so powerful, even on a computer screen. I hope there are other models on the call. And if so, we would be delighted to hear from you as well during the question and answer session at the end. So for now, I'm going to turn things over to Sheba and Sarah and Jalene, and I'll see you in an hour or so for the questions, which you can put in the chat as they come to you at any point. I know you'll have lots of questions, and there are some things that they may not be comfortable addressing. So if I don't ask a particular question, it's not that it's not a good question, it's just that it's probably for a different forum. So Sheba and Sarah and Jalene, take it away, and everyone else enjoy their conversation.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Hi, everybody.
That up there.
Hello. I recognize a bunch of faces out there, or at least 3 names and some faces.
One second. I'm actually going to hand it over to Sarah to start us off with, because I know she likes to start at the beginning. And that's first week.
So my first question for you guys is about how you got started modeling.
Do you want to?
I guess I can start by answering that question. When I was first on the drawing side when I was in college, and I was very curious about modeling. I was very shy, so it was a scary thing, but I was familiar with it from being on the artist side, and it was just really, it was a way to challenge myself. Can I do this scary thing in a safe, known way? So I graduated from my college, moved to the Annapolis area, and my degree is in graphic design. But I'd been working doing that, wanted to change, so I just started modeling, just called around a bunch of places and asked who I needed to talk to and where I needed to go. And it was coincidentally in August, right at the beginning of the semester, which is when a lot of teachers are scheduling. So I got an overwhelming response and lots of bookings, which was very encouraging, and just got started doing it. And for fun, I'm going to try to think of my very first modeling job. I remember my first few. I don't know if this was the first one, but one of my first ones was for a sculpture class at Towson University. And it was just a basic, like, standing reference pose, which was scary enough, but that was one of my first. I don't know if that was my first one, but it was one of my first ones. Another one of my first jobs was working at the Thai Sophia Acupuncture Institute. That was a really interesting job. I've never worked another job like that. It was the Thai Sophia Acupuncture Institute. It was a drawing class at the acupuncture school. Mostly gesture drawing, but the teacher had me bring all these different costumes, and we dressed up as different archetypes. And some were clothed and some were nude, and it was just like a fun way for the students to get more comfortable with the nude figure.
Neat.
And it was like mentally engaging too. Like it was really interesting. That was years ago. I worked for them for a couple of years, but I'm guessing they don't teach the class without that one teacher. But it was an interesting intro to modeling, because it's nothing like any other class I've ever worked for. How about you guys? Jalene, do you remember your first modeling job?
I do. So I had been in the arts. Well, I'd taken art classes since I was a little kid, and then in college had worked with the figure. And then I moved from like little tiny Missouri to Denver. And I thought, oh, I'll model to make a little money and get connected with the art community. And I'd actually met a male art model online trying to do online dating in the early days of online dating.
Oh my goodness.
And so he told me about a couple places. So one of them I called. I think maybe I met him once
Mhm.
Like that didn't go anywhere, but the modeling sure did. So thank you wherever he is. Um, yeah,
Oh my
so
goodness.
this one artist, he had a very small little school. So I posed for him first for a painting. And then it was like we did a couple sessions with that, like a partial nude. And he was very nice. And then it was time for the class. And I took off my glasses once I was in there. And it
Mhm.
was like a big relief because I couldn't see anybody and I couldn't make eye contact with anybody.
Oh my goodness.
So that helped. Now, of course, like I put the contacts in and I'm like seeing everybody, total eye contact. But for those first few years, it was felt good to not have the eye contact.
Mhm.
And so this piece that's up right now is one of the early ones that I did at the Art Students League of Denver. And the artist is Michael Olson. And this he gave me the painting, so I've had this like forever. It's a favorite piece of mine, and I don't know why he gave it to me because it was just so wonderful, but I'm glad he did. So when I was
Mhm.
preparing for today, I had reached out and I'm like, hey Michael, blast from the past, is it okay if I share your piece? I just loved it so much. So I wanted as an example of my early modeling days. And yeah, he was tickled. So yeah, so I really got my start at the Art Students League of Denver and modeled there for, oh God, like 8 years solid. And then intermittently when I would go back after I moved here, I'd go back to visit and I would still model out there. So
Mhm.
yeah, a long relationship with them, but now I'm very happily settled out here and modeling out here. So
Cool.
yeah, I guess, I don't want to take up all the time with it, but so some people have found it interesting how I officially got my start with modeling though, because there's like a little bit more of a story with that. And maybe a few folks know it, but so I got my degree in philosophy with an art minor, and I would always joke I'm going to use my art to support my philosophy. Don't make that joke.
Mm.
So I moved to Colorado, and Colorado gets some really icy, bitter winters. And I slipped and fell, and I had hit my head. I picked myself up. I went to a modeling session that night, and then within a couple days, we were realizing things were not right. So I ended up having a mild traumatic brain injury and some like neck and back issues. Thankfully, nothing requiring surgery, but it was like months and kind of years of therapies. And so within a few months, I had to quit my jobs, except for modeling. Um, Modeling was low stress. It was like the only job where you can like lay down on the job. Like if my back was bothering me, I could
Yeah.
lay down. And it was just such a low stress environment because I couldn't handle loud noises, like flashing lights or any kind of like stressful stimulus. And modeling carried me through all of that. And apparently like I had an aptitude because next thing I knew I'm feeling better and I'm recovered and I'm actually modeling full time and no interest in like going back to other work until like now. So all right, Sheba, my guys are getting rowdy, so it sounds like it's your turn.
They're like, where is it? So this is me. This isn't the very first time I ever modeled, but it is the very first time that I ever posed for an artist in a private session. I started modeling probably back in 2006-ish, but I started first as a photography model because my roommate, my coworker, and then roommate was also a photographer, and I was taking some darkroom photography classes and then digital editing, which is basically Photoshop classes at the local community college. And we were comparing notes and he was like, well, you should just model your ideas instead of letting other people do them. And I was like, haha, yeah, right. And he's like, no, I'll photograph you. And I was like, haha, I'm not a model. And he goes, yes, you are. Come on, let's do it. And it was fun. I didn't really have any interest in being what I thought was a model. I didn't want to wear clothing. I just wanted to make art. So I decided that modeling wasn't really for me, but I liked photography. And then I moved out to Montana and did a bunch of self-portraits and started putting them online. And then anybody with a photography hobby who was interested in photographing figurative nudes would contact me. And I, if it worked out for my schedule, I would work with them because it seemed like a good idea at the time. And then 3 years later, I moved back to the East Coast and had a pretty much a full modeling portfolio that was like 90% fine art nudes. And when you change your zip code and you're a brand new model, people start trying to book you for shoots. And I didn't have enough time because I was working full time as a waitress. And so I started charging for, for modeling gigs. And a few artists who are also photographers found me through the networking websites that models and photographers use, and they contacted me and they said, hey, I don't know if you've ever done this, but would you be interested in, sitting for a drawing or painting? And this piece was by Ray Riziki, and he was the, first one to book me for that. And he pretty much, it was really funny because I didn't know what to do. Like, I knew how to model as a photography model, but there's a lot more movement to that. There's a lot more of exploring the space around you and kind of like adapting to the light as it changes with the environment. But when you're art modeling, it's a little more static. It can be more static. So you have to know your body differently. So he kind of just let me hold a pose until I couldn't hold it anymore. So I basically learned what my body could do pretty quickly. I didn't really start full-time modeling until 2012 when I had a breakup with waitressing. It didn't go very well, and I decided never to revisit it. And it just, like with you, Sarah, it happened to be the perfect time. It happened to be the end of August, right when everybody was starting to book for the fall. So when I decided to go full-time, it was just like, bam. I thought it would be temporary until I went back to school or found something else. And it, until COVID, that was my sole job, 2012 to then. So that was a bunch of years. I can't count right now. So 8 years. Yes. Well, that's my story.
Cool. Thanks for
Very
sharing,
cool.
guys.
I forgot about your self portrait stuff out in Montana, but I'm remembering now because I saw you do a presentation, I think in Frederick, like years and years ago, and you had some of it
That's
in
actually
there.
where I met you.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where we met. Yep. It's funny. And that's kind of segues into the next thing. Like, I want to talk about what modeling is to us, and we've all kind of touched on this a little bit, because how we come to modeling is kind of a little piece of the story of how modeling becomes a part of our life, because we don't just like try it. That's what's different from not just the three of us, but the idea of a professional model who is also a creative spirit and makes this not just our living or our income, but we do this because we've become good at it over many years. And so modeling for us is more than just a job. It's more than just a creative outlet. It's all of those things together. And for me, I always like try to find like a catchphrase or a simple way to like put it into my profile, because people always want to know, it's like, well, why do you model? Like, well, are you paying off loans? Are you, are you trying to buy a new car? Are you trying to get to know yourself or whatever? There's all of those things, all of the above, sure. But my short, sweet way to put it is I always say that I'm modeling to be part of the process. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't like the word model, and I've kind of struggled to find out what it is that I do. And early on, I tried to use the word muse because I thought, oh, it's such a beautiful word. It just sort of encompasses the relationship between the source of inspiration, the model, and the artist, but it's a difficult word, and there's a lot of conceit wrapped up in calling yourself a muse, and then there's that. So I've come full circle now, and I don't hate the word model. I try to own it now, and I don't consider it to be a thing that you are. I consider it to be a thing that you do. So it's a verb, not a noun. So yeah. So this talk, being invited to do this by the studio school is very important to me. And thank you very much for the opportunity, because it is important to me to express that modeling is more than just a profession. It is a art practice in itself, and models who are good at what they do are good at what they do in the same way that an artist is a good artist. It is a subjective thing. It is but it's also an effort and time and learned skill set, as well as a little bit of, hopefully talent. I don't know. So I'm proud of what I do, and
Oh, Sheba, you've muted yourself.
I'm very eager to share that pride with everyone else, and so I'm happy to be here. And that's what modeling is for me. And I'm surprised. Oh, that's me. Okay. This is from one of the earliest open drawing sessions I ever attended in the DC area. This is by Ralston Cyrus, who I still come across, once every 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'll see him at another drawing session or another class. And that's just kind of part of what modeling is. You form these relationships slowly with people over time. It's like getting to know each other a little bit at a time over the years. And it's been pretty cool to see what friendships and creative partnerships spring up out of that. I love it because it's blue. I had to say that.
Well, I'll hop in.
What is modeling for you?
I was going to say, let me hop in next.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So then I can ask my question and not be talking for
Sorry.
so long. Yeah.
These are kind of like all over the place, so feel free to like skip around or tell me to go forward or back, guys.
Sure. So this piece is by Heather Blackwell. It is actually a really recent piece from this spring. And this one, I've had it up on Instagram, and people just continue to love it. And I continue to love it. Like every time it gets a little bump. And to me, this piece like really helps exemplify what modeling is to me. And to all my other artists, I love all your work too. I love red though, like Sheba loves blue, and this one has red. So
it's beautiful.
So for me, sometimes with modeling, I'm living vicariously through the artists.
Me too.
I see your work. I see their work, and I'm like, in my mind, like I would be doing this, or like drawing inspiration from them. So, so part of it, I'm living vicariously through artists, but I'm really trying to collaborate and bring things to them, and especially artists that I know or I'm getting to know, and I know certain things like get them really excited. So for me, modeling is very much about the collaboration and like really bringing something to the table, and the artist can take it or leave it. I'm not offended if they don't, if they're not interested in the spin I'm trying to put on it, and they have their own, because it's fun. It's a surprise. You don't know what you're going to see or how they'll interpret what you're doing. So in some ways it's a game. But basically it keeps it exciting and interesting for me. So this one though, it has like my favorite color. It has one of my favorite poses, which is like, mind you, I hate doing a long one, but like a standing contrapposto pose,
Mhm.
which for me just like it feels right. And in that one, somehow I managed to like hold the fabric out to have the dramatic flair that I liked. And this one was on Zoom, so I could see myself in it. And I'm like, please, somebody like make something happen with it. I'm so excited about this pose.
Yes.
And several people did, but this one just, oh, I was in love. And I mean, not that it's me, it's this beautiful piece that like did so much more than what I was even doing with the pose. So
Mhm.
so yeah, things like that like the interaction of somebody taking it and then like going beyond what I could even think.
Yes. Yes,
And it
that's
just,
it exactly, Jalene.
yeah,
You feel
yeah,
seen. You feel
yes,
like you feel 100% seen. Like this is what you wanted to put out there, and it's just very gratifying when somebody responds to it, and then you respond to their artwork, and it just creates this sort of like feedback loop of mutual inspiration.
yes, thank you both, you put it you found what I was trying to say, so thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love that connection and interaction, and like I consider myself an extrovert, but not all caps extrovert, like a gentler extrovert. So
Uh-huh.
having this connection, it's a visual kind of extrovert moment, and then like having somebody respond and you know, and knowing that, you know, they're really excited about it too. I mean, I've loved modeling. It carried me through having, you know, a major life change, and it's you know, been with me through a lot of changes over the years. But the like, I don't know, it's just always this positive thing to look forward to. So
Mhm. For sure.
all right, Sarah.
I
Why,
don't
let's
know
see.
if you want to, if this was the
Yeah,
right one for you.
this is a great image to talk about. This is I was posing up in Provincetown, Massachusetts, with a group of artists that I've modeled for fairly often. And the artist is Cedric Egley, and he studies with the Cape School of Art, which is Henry Henchy and Charles Hawthorne and that legacy. For those of you guys that are familiar with that. And that also happens to be the school that I used to paint in and still do. My art side painting style is in this school as well. So this image means a lot to me because I went to Provincetown to both model and paint for years and years, and I learned, it informed so much of my modeling career and my artist career and who I was as a person. The artists, Cedric and Jonette Egley, that invited me out there to pose for their workshop were so generous and inviting and supportive of me, which is really typical of a lot of the artists that I've worked for. I feel really blessed to be a part of an art community that is so supportive. I don't even have the words. It's just been amazing.
Yeah.
I can confirm that. I've met the Egleys as well, and to them, Sarah is family. Like that's the easiest way to explain it. She walks out of the room, the Egleys have nothing but praise, like constantly. Like, and it's not just praise. It's just like, oh, you know where everything is in the kitchen and all the stuff. It's like the house is, you might as well be one of the kids. So
This may not have been the year, but the first time I went up to Provincetown with them, they go up to Provincetown every summer and paint and study up there and teach. And the first year I was modeling, I met them a few months after I started modeling, and they invited me to Provincetown, and I was sheltered, shy, scared of so many things in the world, 21, 22, can't remember. Never done anything like that in my life. And they were so welcoming. They invited me to stay in their rented beach house for free, right on the beach. I'd never done anything like that. paid me to model in their workshop, and were willing to teach me. And it was amazing. And it was the jumping off point for so many things in my life. I model for a lot of artists in Provincetown now when I travel up there. And I paint. I have a gallery up there that I show my work in. I've grown so much from that single generous moment from them. And so this painting reminds me of that. So that's one of the reasons that I model, is for those lasting friendships and connections and relationships. And I guess, let's see, probably the biggest reason that I model is about that collaboration that you guys were talking about. And it's about two artists coming together, like doing their art, and it's more than it would have been individually. Like, we're creating something that we couldn't have done by ourselves. And that's really neat to me. That's really special.
Yeah.
And then another side to that question, there's so many layers.
Yeah,
When I first started modeling, I still am pretty shy. I was so shy and scared. I wanted to challenge myself, see if I could do it. I thought I might want to teach art, and I was terrified of public speaking. So this was a safe way I could get used to being in front of crowds of people without saying anything to get over this. And eventually I've gotten a lot better. Still scary. Public speaking, not going to happen, but I can stand up there and be quiet. And now when I model, I just do it part-time. It's changed. It's no longer a connection to it is a connection to the art world, but it's more of a moment of meditation and quiet and peacefulness, and a time for me to have permission to be still and collect my thoughts without a smartphone, without technology. And I just wanted to put that in there, that I really value that time now in my later modeling years.
Sarah,
my senior years.
If I could jump in with that. Yeah, when I first started modeling, because I was also working a day job, modeling was such beautiful quiet time. Then
my goodness.
I did it full time, and it became too much quiet. Now I have a full-time day job again, and I need the modeling. It's like the meditative time, it's the moving my body time. And like, I'll do the 8-hour day, and then I go model, a couple days a week for another 3 hours. And part of my body's like, why are you doing this? Are you insane? Like, I'm sore. But it's like the little thirsty plant, like, oh, water me, like nourish me with, all the beautiful energy and just the passion there. And also where I can just be. So for sure. Relate. Yes.
Yes. Ooh, this is a cool image.
Yeah, I actually want to jump to something that Jay's about an inch away from talking about. This is more Provincetown.
Yeah, this is another artist that I worked with that I met up in Provincetown. Gray day. There's me posing on the beach in the sun. Cool. And him starting that painting. And this was neat to see, like, the evolution of the painting from when he started it, from that fresh impression, like the moment there on the beach in the sun, and then where he's taken it. And I've known him for as long as I've been modeling, 20 years now. And it's neat to see where he's taken these concepts that he's learned from the artists that he's studied with and from working with me, and then gone on to do different things with them, which is really neat to see.
Yeah. I didn't mean to
very inspired.
Skip over this, but I might come back to this one later because I have a different story. So we'll come back to that.
Are you ready for my question? Is that what you're saying?
We'll just ask your question, and then I'll just kind of move around on the art. If you guys want me to stop, I'll stop.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, my question is, it's a little loaded, so you're welcome to choose what you'd like from it. It's a choose your own adventure question, and we can always come back to some of it.
Okay.
So a lot of it basically thinking of your body as a tool of your art. And you can take it from there, or I was curious, especially when we're figuring out images to share, if you have a signature pose or like if self-portraiture plays into this, but really kind of thinking about how you're using your body as the tool of your art for this. I mean, of course, we have costumes and props and lights and everything, but what it really comes down to a lot is like the use of the body.
Well, I can pull out if we want to grab I have an image too. Sarah, did you want to grab anything specific?
Let me see. What ones do I have that would be good for that?
And I think I had one for myself, of course.
Yeah. Do you want me to grab the one with the hoops or something different?
Oh yeah, because I had it. All right, if you could go back to that first one, and then I'll actually, that one certainly counts as a signature pose for me, because if I have modeled for you more than a few times, you'll know that pose. And then the first pose.
Oh, the very, very first one?
Yeah.
Sure,
Just in terms of the like signature pose. So this one, hopefully you all can appreciate some humor, a little tongue in cheek. So this pose has been with me like forever. It's really fun to do. And I finally, several years ago, I was like up in Carroll County, I think Carroll County Arts. So it's like a Friday night group. We'd always like joke around, have some laughs kind of thing. And I'm like, may I present you with the floating bosom? That's what I call this pose, the floating bosom. So it's definitely a signature pose of mine. And it looks very relaxed. It is a very strenuous pose with just a lot of
big stretch in the back there. And you have two different energies going on with your legs. And also with the stretch with the arm that carries all the way through. For anybody who's aware of this, that stretch from her arm through her back is all the way through her legs. So her whole body is feeling that stretch for the entirety of the pose. And it feels great for the first 5 minutes. And then after that, it just becomes more and more painful.
Shoulders versus hips, huge stretch. So then if you go back to the one with the red by Heather, this is the gentler standing version of that kind of thing, where like there's the hip thrust out. And like for my poses, I really like playing with that, a little bit of twist. I will say as my body's gotten heavier, I'm very irritated with my stomach because it covers up. So it looks like a very relaxed pose, and I'm twisting, and there's this gentle tummy that's just sitting there relaxing, and the rest of me is like wrenched and twisted, and I'm like, oh, you're blocking what's going on. Because I really like having that kind of twist and the juxtaposition of the hips and shoulders. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. I have a lot of fun doing poses that incorporate that in some way or another, whether they're reclining or standing or seated. That's just like a hip thrust is my favorite kind of way to use my body.
It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I think part of why and it's so hard to say. I'm part of why we are good models, just to say it, is because we have a sense of that and appreciation of what those movements and motions do and create.
Yeah.
And we're willing to use our bodies in ways that are sometimes painful, because we care about that and have an appreciation for it.
Yep.
I know I can't do things that I could do when I was younger. Standing poses when I was younger were much easier than they are now.
Oh yes.
I definitely feel it in my knees. It's a very physically challenging job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, Sheba, didn't you have
Yeah, I definitely have that. Yeah. I feel like as far as things, I'm skipping all these beautiful things, but as far as like signature poses and like the way I use my body, I definitely really enjoy a good contrapposto or a bit of twist. And I feel like when I started modeling, art modeling in the DC area, I was willing to do standing poses and I was willing to put like a fair amount of contrapposto. And I have pretty big hips for a small person. So I
And I
can
guess we
really,
should say, we all know, but the rest of them might know, standing poses are generally the most painful, the most strenuous. Not always, but generally
yeah,
they're the hardest.
there's a lot of weight on a
Yes.
few small
yes.
points. And then when you exaggerate the pose itself, when you're thrusting your hips out or twisting
Yes.
into it, I mean, if it hurts when you're at the grocery store standing in line for a long time, it's gonna definitely hurt. in the classroom.
envision there is no arch support, there's no
Yes.
padding, because God forbid you are standing on some padded mat, you cannot keep your balance. So
Yeah.
you're like, your feet are gripping whatever solid concrete or wood surface.
I know one of the most painful parts for me in a standing pose is the bottom of my heel, that heel bone.
Yep.
That's one of the most painful. I mean, it depends, I guess, but that inevitably as time goes by for my body type, different body types can do different things. Like you guys might, if you're doing a contrapposto standing pose, what generally becomes the most painful part?
Well, at one point for me, it was feet, and it still is feet. But what I'm finding now is
feet.
my hips are not as strong as they used to be. Like I used to get a little bit of pain in my hips, even from like slow days at work when I was a waitress. But then when I started modeling, I did a lot of yoga at the same time, and I did a lot of gesture poses, and it just kind of balanced out like the number of classes I would do a week that were a lot of gestures versus like single poses. And I didn't purposely schedule, but it kind of worked out most of the time that I could kind of adjust my poses based on my schedule. So if I was doing a standing pose in one class, I would do like a seated pose or something, or try to book something that wasn't going to be a single pose. But then you always get stuck with like 2 or 3 standing poses in a week, and it just happened. So I felt like I was doing a lot of standing poses in the early first few years of modeling, and I feel like I kind of became known as being reliably able to do standing poses. Like if you book her, she's not going to refuse to do a standing pose. And so I started doing a lot of sculpture classes and a lot of painting classes. And the thing is standing poses are really good for a wide variety of classes, because it's easier to teach anatomy when the head is at the top and the feet are at the bottom, and then everything else is kind of in the middle at regular intervals, because it's a top-down approach. And so if there's an instructor who does focus on anatomy and teaching measurements and teaching how to see and get from the model to the page, at some point in the beginning of the class there's going to be standing poses. And anyways, so I did a lot of them, and I still do a fair amount, but now after the pandemic and after just lifestyle changes, like I don't do yoga as much as I used to. I'm kind of trying to get back into it, but my hips hurt. I start doing standing poses now, and I have to not do another one for the rest of the week. Like I don't have the same stamina, and I've had to gently start, having that I'm old conversation with instructors, and I laugh about it, and they're like, no, you're ageless. You will live for, I'm like, no, I'm almost 40. And I know that's not old. I'm not stupid, but I am also not 20 anymore. So it's been a while. So sure, I'll take my vitamins and do more yoga, but my hips are slowly gonna start yelling at me more. And anyway, so I love
taste it out, because this is a beautiful pose and a beautiful painting. Oh, who's the artist, by the way?
this is Gavin Glackus's class at the Yellow Barn. And
Cool.
I try to wait until he posts on social media so I can just snag it. But this was after several sessions. So he booked me for multiple classes back to back. So he had more than the normal 2 times to work on the piece. So I basically did the same pose for 2 classes in a row. I think, I don't remember now. It was either 4 weeks in a row or 2 classes in a row for 2 weeks. I don't remember.
Cool. Well, it's beautiful.
I love it. And I was looking for a good standing pose, and I was like, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, much like you
So-
all, age has not been kind when it comes to
Yeah.
standing poses. In my 20s, they
Yeah.
were one thing, but various injuries over the years, and then getting very top heavy, because it used to be my low back would kill me. Now, like the shoulders do, because the weight of the breasts. So I go in somewhere and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so could do it. I'm like, yeah, well, he's a skinny guy. He doesn't have like 10, 20 pounds of breast weight hanging off.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah,
so
we definitely have learned over
luck
the
with
years
that.
of doing this, like what our bodies can do versus somebody
Yeah.
else, which is great. Like everybody's different,
Yep.
We
I'm
each
like,
have our strengths.
I'll- I can give you a reclining that he'll never be able to give you. So
Yeah.
one
So
thing I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, so one thing I did do, and I was gonna try to sneak in a little extra question
Mhm.
that relates with it. I found the most amazing stool, and a bunch of people have already heard my stool spiel, so I won't inflict it
tell
on you. But it's a beautiful 30-inch stool, and I can sit up on its super padded seat and have one leg down and one leg bent, so I'm standing-ish in a way that does not kill my knees. And so I can actually
Oh my goodness.
manage like 2.5 hours. I haven't done 3, but so yeah.
We could have a whole conversation about
tricks
tips and tricks to make poses
there
possible.
a couple like, or just one, like what's do you have a favorite kind of self-care or a helper?
Oh, good question.
Lots of water.
Yeah, water and steps, I
Basic,
guess.
but I can tell when I forget to drink enough water when I'm posing. Like it is lots of water. I carry Advil in my purse.
Yes, I now do.
Hot showers.
Mm-hmm.
Go get something sweet and tasty after your modeling session to distract yourself and reward yourself for hard work.
Once a month, I try to go get a deep tissue massage. Like a good hour and a half,
that
2
sounds
hour.
good.
I've done this. I used to go to Spa World like
God, yes.
once every 2 months or so. I used to go there like a lot, but I obviously haven't been in over 2 years. I haven't.
Oh, right.
You should make a Spa World date.
That would be heaven. Spa World is a 24-hour Korean style spa with like
the most
soaking
amazing
pools
soaking
and
pool with
massage
jets
jets
and
and
yes.
hot sauna rooms and cold sauna rooms and bubble tea and hot soup, and you can take naps there.
Yes.
You can stay there. Like I started going there when I was a waitress because it would be open when I got off work. And like sometimes I would just sleep there with a couple of coworkers. We would go and just spend all night and then go to work in the morning. And because you can sleep there, it's open 24 hours. It used to be you could pay for 24-hour access, then they shortened it to 12. And I feel like they shortened it to 8 right before the pandemic, but it's still like 8 hours is a long time to be spending in a spa. But anyway,
It will also help with that body self-consciousness. You walk in and there's on a busy day, nothing but nude bodies everywhere. You will get
that
over
is the important
quickly.
part when we say Korean style spa. It is the water part is not clothing optional. It's like no clothing, and then the main part they give you these like almost, they look like prison jumpsuits. So everybody's wearing the same like comfy, oversized, awkwardly shaped pajama set.
Yep.
Um,
And that's the co-ed part.
yeah.
Yep. All right. Sorry to derail with that. Now I'm like, Spa World. Oh, sounds so good.
So on the topic of signature poses, I don't really have a signature pose necessarily, more like a signature style, but I'm not really sure I would describe it. But that ties into one thing we were talking about and getting ready for this session is that there are things that we do repeat often. And so anyone that has worked with me for any length of time knows that if you say model's choice, I will pull out a book and read while posing, whether it be sitting or standing or reclining. So it was not hard to pull out a selection of images from all different sessions over the years of me reading this, even online. So here's a collection of them, of some wonderful artists, some from a long time ago and some from just this past year. So yep, you guys I'm sure are familiar with me reading a book, which has been great. I used to read a lot when I was a kid and growing up and even throughout school, but with the advent of smartphones, I read less and less. And so modeling is my reading time as well.
I've had a few nice reading poses. They're rare for me, but I really enjoy them. I'll try to read on my smartphone because it has the smallest amount of movement when I'm changing.
I know, and a great big thank you to all of the artists that have drawn me and tolerated that movement as I turn pages. Which I have to say, shout out to the studio school for being very welcoming of that.
Well, I may have to steal an idea, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I've only done that once in a while.
Do you guys have poses that you repeat like this, like a series?
I can grab yours, Jalene.
Oh, well, like a theme series? Yes.
Yeah, like a theme that you come back to.
Yes. Not that one.
Oh yeah, that's right, Jalene. I remember now.
Yes. There we go.
I love this theme.
So my theme is, it's like strong women, authoritative women. Like, I don't think you'll ever find anything of me anywhere as like the maid or the servant girl. I own nothing.
Oh, I loved the warrior
to do with it.
That you did. I got to draw Jalene online, which was so wonderful, as with many of my fellow models. And I loved the warrior woman costume. That one was really fun to draw.
It is so painful yet so worth it. I love it.
Oh my goodness.
That brass bra will like dig into my ribs.
Oh my goodness.
Like, oh my God, this hurts so much. But there's like some great stuff that comes out of it. So yeah. Lee Parrington just Lee had several, so I had a hard time choosing. There were these gesture ones, but I really liked that one. And then I did a Queen of Hearts, and so I had one that Kathy Daywalt did. She's just done a bunch. And then I chose for a portrait session. My mom had been watching a bunch of film noir, and I'm like, oh God, yes, I love the femme fatales, especially like the film noir. And I just had like the perfect hat, and Terry did a great job with that. And then a little play on Narnia, because I think we were doing our model extravaganza. It was like holiday movies. So I did like the White Witch, but I prefer like a White Queen over a White Witch. She's borderline both. So there I am with my box of chocolates.
Yes, the White Queen setup was gorgeous.
Thank you.
That was awesome. That was really fun to draw too.
And I had made the crown, like now I've just been kind of collecting crowns.
Like, I don't want to make another one. I just want to wear one.
That's neat. Sheba, do you have something that you return to?
I do, but mine segues into another topic nicely.
Oh, okay.
So rather than compiling a series of like repeated poses,
Mhm.
because I wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about my photography modeling and a little bit of how I incorporate some of the ideas and inspirations that I've gotten from art and artists that I work with into the modeling I do for photography and vice versa, just sort of how it all becomes this and never-ending cycle. So a little bit of background on this. This is a bit of a story. So this whole series is called the Loie Fuller series, and it's based off inspiration of a style of dress and dance invented, and pretty much only she did it. Well, she taught a few other people to do it, and there were a lot of like copycat things around the same time. Loie Fuller was a dancer. She was originally from the US. She moved to France during the Belle Epoque era, and she pioneered not just unique stage performances involving oversized skirts and dresses, but she invented a lot of stage lighting techniques and contraptions that we actually still use today, such as putting things in front of a light to create projections and shapes, or moving things in front of the light to create a almost like a texture, like moving water or tree branches or lightning or raindrops or something, using lights and things moving in front of the light. She would also create gels. She invented a whole bunch of ways to gel the light to be different colors so that you're projecting blue or red light from different directions. And that's part of why she made the lights, and part of why her outfits were these billowing white sheets.
Yeah,
were
love
because
those
she
shapes
was
in there.
incorporating, yeah, because she was incorporating a lot of projections, lighting techniques on top of her performances. So they were like a full thing where she thought about all of the aspects of her performance, and she really took control over it too. She filed all these patents. She collaborated with Marie Curie. She did a lot of things. There's some movies and documentaries and a lot of stuff out on the internet about her if you're interested and curious, or I'll talk to you some other time about it. So this was a photographer friend of mine in New York who I actually stay with almost every time I go up there. His name is Paul Ward, and he had started a series where he wanted the models he worked with for a while to pick somebody that inspired them and do a photo shoot around that inspiration, around that person. So whether a portrait set where you dress up like that person, or you pose in the style of another model, or you take a photographer whose style you liked, and you sort of like decorate to create something. So I picked Loie Fuller, and I made this outfit out of shoelaces and bubble gum, and got on the bus at midnight and went up there, and it was like July or August, and it was just drenched in sweat. And by the time I was done with the photo shoot, the thing already stunk with sweat and just grossness, and it was really a mess. And it was too big for the space that we had to shoot in. So the only photo that really encapsulated what we were looking for was this one where he's like, I just don't have any space. We should really go to the park, but it's too hot. And I don't feel like going to the park because we would have to get on the subway, we have to go into Manhattan and go to Central Park. And I was like, well, why don't we just do it on the sidewalk in front of your house? And he's like, well, we walk. I was like, there's nobody coming. Let's just do it now. So we got out there, and I just woofed it back and forth. And he's like, oh, it's pretty good. It's working out. So we did a few pictures there. Those ended up being the ones that, this ended up being the one that we used for that. And then I had the
Neat.
idea of using this because an artist locally down in the DC area, actually Rob Liberace is the one who gave me the idea to look her up. He's like, we were talking about things, and he suggested that I look up Loie Fuller. He said, I think you'll really like her work. I think you'll really be inspired by how she moves. And he suggested we do a project, which we haven't quite done yet. We'll come back to it. It's just life is busy. And so I started reading about her, and the more I read about her, the more I was inspired, not just by her movements and her costumes, but by how she thought about her whole creative process. Like science, it was performance, it was collaboration. She's the one who trained Isadora Duncan. And there's a lot of like drama there to read into. So I decided to take this and kind of, since I was having so much fun exploring who Loie Fuller was and trying to emulate the movements that I see in the tiny little videos that you can find that remain of her work. And I started reaching out to other photographers that I'd worked with previously and saying, hey, I've got this outfit. I'm looking for unique locations. I kind of need a lot of space. Is this something that you would be interested in photographing? And some of them said yes. Some of them were like, no, let's just do what we normally do. Some were like, I don't really understand what you're talking about. A dancer, but she uses a giant piece of silk. Okay. And it's just the sort of like, each time I've worked with another photographer, the more images I have to show the next one, the more they understand or they get it, and are able to start thinking about locations or ways to use to shoot it themselves. And these are just 3 of many shoots I've done so far. And I just wanted to kind of keep it, I want to keep it going. I want to keep working with more photographers. I want to see how many other ways people will see this, because everybody photographs in a different way. But what stays constant is me being the subject. And while I have that for other things, this is a project that I'm actively working on and I've kind of put together and am pushing forward rather than working with the space or something. So it's a project that brings together all the different aspects of what I like about the creative process. And I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Cool. Yeah, that's neat.
I don't, so having said all of that, about photography and things, I know you are both artists. Do either of you work in self-portraiture? I have a little bit of self-portraiture that I've done, well, quite a lot actually, and I have a piece that I can show at the end. But is that anything the 2 of you have really explored or would be willing to talk about?
Yeah.
I think that is a side of what we do. Like our modeling is our art and it's our expression of that. And so there's a little bit of that push and pull frustration of not being of being the model and the artist for the same piece.
I'm a horrible photographer to work for. I'm so demanding of myself. I'm like, could you get it right? On both ends. I'm also a very demanding model for my photography.
I know.
I have one of your photos in here. Let's look at it.
Sorry, one of the birds is screeching. Jimmy is very upset because Grandma was not visiting with him. So my poor mom has
my goodness.
him. And Beaky's very quietly grumbling because Jimmy won't be quiet. So hopefully they'll settle now that Grandma's across from them. Thank you, Mom.
Okay.
Anyway, so so this was a little bit of a turning point with my self-portraiture. I've done some. Oh yes, I've had the bird in the session. I've had
that's
virtual,
so fun.
and Beaky has been in many in-person sessions. So yep, they're like, why are we not getting to share the spotlight tonight? So so I've done self-portraiture with both photography and drawing since college, because I took photography in college and I was very limited on the models because I took it over the summer. So I'm like shooting myself, which was also some like, that was pretty much my first nude modeling was for myself as like a test subject. And then we had to do self-portraiture in one of our drawing classes. And I hated it. The photography went better. So over the years, I've done some with it. And then really a bit of a turning point came during the pandemic, because I wanted fresh images to share with people, well, in particular for work, just to try to make some money because we had lost all of our jobs. And so I had this stained glass mirror my sister had refurbished, and I'd put together this outfit. And so this is where Sheba comes into play, and our other model friend Gazelle, because I was having to get up, run, hit the self timer, run back into the pose, and oh God, it was horrible. So I'm like drenched in sweat, can't take the picture all that well. And I knew you could do some tethering, and I knew there were like little button timers, but I was very stressed. I didn't know what to get. So I called upon my buddies, and
Oh, I forgot about that.
yeah. And so Sheba and Gazelle like were doing a Zoom with me, helping me get all this stuff coordinated. And yeah, so thanks to them, I was able to vastly improve my self-portraiture so that I could be very picky and demanding with myself on both ends, but actually be satisfied with some results. So
Oh my goodness.
much thanks to Sheba and Gazelle for that. This was, I think this may have been the very first shoot that I did with that, and I was really happy with the results and had gotten like a lot of really nice feedback from the artists. And yeah, like once I have more space again to shoot, like I'm really eager to start shooting again. This was just like a terrific way to do it. So I felt I could finally be like a lot more expressive. I wasn't tied down to like 5 seconds of, trying to get into place. And then with having it pop up on my screen right away, I could do all the slight adjustments. It's still really nice to work with another photographer. But I mean, there's something pretty neat about working with yourself on both sides. So yeah, this one really, this was the turning point.
I also get frustrated with myself a lot of time, and I'm like, it would just be so much easier if I was working with a photographer. Like it's funny. I feel like sometimes I'm so used to the collaborative relationship that I'm frustrated when I'm working by myself. Like, why can't I just explain to somebody else what I think would look good, and then we try it together, and then we see really quickly whether or not it'll work, and then we move on to the next thing? Why did I just have to spend 4 hours trying to figure out a technical issue just to see that the thing that I thought might look good is not really working out as well as I thought? And it might be okay if I wasn't frustrated, but
yes.
It is easier to work with another photographer, but it's more rewarding also to work with another photographer. It's not just the instant gratification aspect, because you wait months and sometimes years before you see like photos from some shoots. But it's just, I don't know, it just feels, the energy of two people is just better than just trying to struggle through it yourself. But so that's that. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Well, pre-pandemic, I had a run of several very negative interactions with photographers, from either not getting work or to them just being like really inappropriate behavior. And I was really, really fed up. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be shooting myself. I'm reliable. I show up and I don't harass myself. I might be a hard taskmaster, but I'll also give myself my work. And it was funny because when I'm like, oh, I am all about my self-portraiture now, even though I missed my favorite photographers, then a photographer who had some very good references had contacted me and said, oh, can we shoot outside, like at a distance? I'm like, okay. I had a beautiful, wonderful experience with her. So she had me like back on loving working with photographers again. So yeah.
That's really good. I know we are getting a little later in the evening. Sure. Sarah, is there anything you would like to jump into?
Let's see, what have we not covered?
No,
I guess
sorry, it's Jill.
Hi.
There is one thing that I would love if you would all talk about, and maybe that's where you were about to go, Sarah, but just that incredibly brilliant creative process that we have all gotten to witness. What you do when you are left, to your own devices in your own homes with your own ideas, instead of walking into a classroom and having it there to, just kind of plunk into, what that's been like for all of you, and that like that incredible moonlight setup that you did, Sarah, which was so amazing. And like
I love
all of you have done. How different that experience has been for you, if you have enjoyed it. We certainly have. And I know that I, as a teacher, have learned an awful lot from watching, how you all do that.
That's a good point. Sarah, this I know you came up with this idea of recreating Moonlight for an online session, and we were all kind of through our struggles. Okay, so really quick side thing, when you're setting up lighting for a photo shoot or a drawing session in a room, for a drawing session in a room, whether it's a classroom or an open studio, you get what you see is what you get kind of lighting. So where the shadows fall, or where the light and the highlights are, that's what you see, and that's what you're going to be trying to incorporate or working with in your drawing. When you're in a photo studio, you can be working with natural light or available light, and you can do the WYSIWYG light as well, or you can be working with strobes or other kinds of flash or mono lights, or lights that are basically triggered by your shutter release or some sort of off camera trigger event, whether it's sound or visual or whatever. And so those will create a flash that freezes time and movement, and isn't what you see is what you get, but it is something that you set the exposure and the time in your camera for. So you're accounting for that amount of light. And when you're in Zoom, none of that matters, because Zoom is run by a bunch of robots, and it's going to make its own decisions, and it's going to fight you. Even just in this space right here, I had to adjust my lighting for what Zoom is getting, because I have a bunch of overlay headlights on, and now I'm sitting in a dark corner with a light pointed at me, and it doesn't really look like that to you. So that's what we're fighting with in Zoom. And when we create light that is even workable, that has been a challenge. So Sarah came up with a way to create this gorgeous, beautiful blue moonlight, and everybody thinks she's a magician because she is.
Yes, because Zoom will alter your light. Like it doesn't, like you put in one thing and it changes, and then the next day you could do the same exact lighting and it does something different yet again. But Sarah is a wizard, as said.
Oh my goodness.
Finger pose is a wizard.
Well, I appreciate you guys saying that, but doing this session was just as frustrating. It's still a lighting effect that you're creating within Zoom's idiosyncrasies and craziness. It was just as challenging to set up and figure out. But there's so many layers to this subject of this particular session, and tying into doing sessions on Zoom. One of the things that I loved about it, and so I guess my question for you guys in relation to this is, what is the best thing, the most fun thing about doing online sessions, and what is the worst thing? We'll just keep it to those simple things. So think about that while I'm talking about this. I think the best thing about it is that here is this set of limitations that you have to work within to express your art. And for now that COVID has relaxed a little bit, for a lot of us, this was our livelihood as well. So there was a little extra stress added to that. But just as expressing our art, here's the rules, here's the parameters that you have to work in. And as an artist, sometimes that brings out the most fun, creative possibilities, is having just some limitations, but freedom within those limitations. And that was one thing that I loved about doing sessions on Zoom. Like, yes, it was challenging and frustrating, but now apply your intelligence and your creativeness and your just whatever you have to this problem, and use it as a tool to make greater things. And so that's one of the things I did with this moonlight session, was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And it was a little bit risky and a little bit experimental too, because like in this photo, this is a screenshot from one of the sessions. You can't see the shadow side at all. And that's challenging for artists. It's like, it's not cut and dry. It's not super clear. So what are you going to do with that? And that was a little scary to do, given that generally we want to see like where the shadow shapes are and where the light shapes are. But I went for it and it was super fun. Mm-hmm. So I have a series, I sent Sheba a couple of photos of the setup, and I took a time lapse of me tearing it down. So with my Zoom sessions, there's no set space that I have for these. So I'm setting up sometimes in the gallery that I work in, sometimes in different places in my house. So this is me tearing down after I've set it up. I had some pictures of the setup, but I guess you guys kind of know maybe from that picture of seeing it. So all of that is like brought in and set up for any session that I do. I'm like hanging up the backdrop. This was maybe an hour of setup and about, I don't know, 15 minutes of takedown. Tearing it down was easier than setting it up. Yeah, I'm in folder B there, Sheba. So okay. Here's like that's the backdrop sheet being set up in the gallery space. There's a little more of that setup. Then my camera is set up there and the light is set off to the side. And then my moon hanging up there. And that light is, I turn off that bright light and then play the sequence again of me taking it down, Shiva.
No.
Oh. It's not being quick. So what else did I want to say about that session? So that was a really neat way of doing something that's not possible in real life with this new medium that we have to express our art. And a way of like putting something out there for you guys, for artists to then be challenged by and take inspiration from, and kind of meet me in this place, which was really cool. And after this, let's show Luann's art and Martin's art as examples of cool art that came from these sessions. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And the amount of like, the other thing that was fun about doing online sessions was going through our houses and pulling out all sorts of creative things that we had sitting around to put in our sessions. This artist is Luann Zubek. She's drawn me many times in person. She's up in Baltimore. And these are some pieces that I really liked from the Moonlight sessions that I did. Like those a lot. And this is Martin Campos. And he was one of the artists that I worked that came to our online sessions that really embraced that challenge of, hey, this is kind of crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but let's go for it and let's see what happens. And that was really inspiring. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's also an artist that has been really supportive of models, and I appreciate that so much.
True. I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit and talk a bit about it's a little bit of a shameless plug. We do these things. One of the things that the DC Art Model Collective has been doing, that we started doing during the pandemic, just part of a way to create a sense of community, of something that we could all work on as a group, and also to make an event out of the idea of drawing online, because maybe it might not be something that replaces the experience of, it doesn't equate the experience of drawing communally in a group, like the way an open drawing session in person would, but we still wanted to create a community atmosphere and a something that people could get excited about, and that would be a unique thing that we could only do online. So while the idea of having a group model session isn't unique to the DC Art Model Collective, we did start doing these monthly, basically model marathons, and we called them model extravaganzas. And we would vote on a theme each month, and everybody would talk about like their ideas for their poses and their setups, and sometimes we would trade props. We would like run over to each other's houses and drop things off on the porch and be like text message and be like, I sprayed it down before I dropped it off. I promise. I'll see you next week when I pick it up, that kind of thing. Or just like, do lots of screen sharing, like, is my setup right? Am I centered? How's the lighting? It looked good yesterday, but I'm not sure. I'm trying a new lighting setup. Everything's very sparkly. We did a lot of like tech assistance and like creative like feedback sessions with each other. We sat in on each other's sessions during the week so that we could, be supportive and stuff. So we have a couple of, sometimes the artists would do like compilations of like all of the models and their little setups. So this one, our theme was Clue. So we all picked like different characters from the movie or the game Clue. And
murder mystery characters.
Yes,
Some
sorry.
of them are from Clue.
Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. It was mystery in general because I forgot. This was that one. It was just mystery because this one over here was just a crazy person. Jalene, did you want to talk a little bit more about what that was like working together as a group on these?
Sure. Yeah. This is what I was going to talk about too in terms of no, it's great. I mean, and clearly we both found working with people rewarding. Yeah, so like pre-pandemic, you might work with another model if you're also a model who's an artist in the visual arts sense. And actually I've drawn both Sheba and Sarah, and I've been drawn by Sarah. Actually, I've sculpted Sarah, and Sheba's photographed me, and I think I photographed her. And yeah, we've all done a bunch together. Yeah, I did that one of Sheba.
The drawing that Jalene did of me.
Mm-hmm. So, but our interactions are very, very limited, or had been. We'd see each other in passing in the hall, or if we both happen to occupy the model stand at the same time. But with the pandemic, all of a sudden we're actually getting to plan things together and do like group events together. And so we had like the murder mystery one. Then there's one in there with that Cece did.
Oh yeah.
It was so much fun collaborating with you guys for the model extravaganzas.
I apologize for those at home.
I think it's towards the end. There it is. Yeah.
That was another example of like, here's the parameters, be creative within that. And so many great things. So many.
Yeah. So this one, this was our Art Nouveau. No, God, I'm going to say it wrong. It was the Art Nouveau, right?
Yeah, I think it was the Art Nouveau. Yeah.
Because I had been on such a kick with it, and then I kept calling it Art Deco. It's Art Nouveau, which I love, but I've not ever done like Art Nouveau in person, and it involves an assortment of things. So setting it up at home, but the hoops behind Kenyatta and I, these we did a Christmas burlesque together, separately yet together, with the 5 golden rings. So we all we were doing it with Gazelle. We each got hula hoops and wrapped them in gold paper, and we're like pretty much chatting and doing a social thing while we're all at our homes wrapping our hoops, which took forever. So then we had to like reuse the hoops. So some of the Art Nouveau inspiration was like, oh, we already have these hoops, like it's perfect. So yeah, so collaborating and kind of planning all this out together and getting to see what other models are doing, not just hearing about it or just seeing the rendition from an artist, but like seeing it in action. I mean, it was just really inspiring, but also like personalizing, humanizing. there were models that I'm like, oh, they're beautiful. I love the images of them. And then I find out like, they've got the greatest sense of humor, or they're like just the sweetest, most thoughtful person. And so like having that community that, we didn't have in person. Like we would try to do some art model get-togethers. That's how the collective had originally started, was trying to foster that community. And then when we went virtual, we were like, okay, let's kick this into high gear. And I would say the extravaganzas are, let me say it right, extravaganza. So even though our pose would only be for like 20 minutes or something, this was the culmination of everything that we're doing throughout the month with each other. All of our passion and excitement put into this concentrated dose. And so for us, or for me, I feel like for us, like these events, people are like, wow, that's really amazing that you guys did that. We're like, this is our hearts like out here for you. This is our heart on our sleeve for you. You don't know it, but like that's what it is. And this is our heart on our sleeve for each other as well.
Yeah, these really kept us going. They really, really did. And we heard from so many artists that they really looked forward to the extravaganzas each month, and that was really beautiful to hear, or read rather. And but the truth is, doing these things together as a collective helped us keep going. It gave us something to work on, being able to talk to each other regularly, being able to work on a project collectively rather than just floundering away in our individual hardships, because it wasn't just like, it just seemed like something awful was happening to everybody. And we were able to form a support network and help each other out, financially when we could, with goodwill when we could. And we came together as a community, and it was really wonderful. It wasn't just like we're all friends now. My friends have met my friends' friends, and now all of our friends are friends. It was like we definitely became super close.
At Thanksgiving and at Christmas, we did like cookie runs for each other. You don't see it
so sweet, you guys,
from the other side of the screen, but we're up like baking and trading some recipes, and then like coordinating, okay, if I drop off these to you and you drop off these to me, then we'll each hit this half of the city. And
and every Thanksgiving we were doing like Zoom sessions while we cooked. Like that. Like, well, cooked and drank.
So the some of the sessions and the extravaganzas, like that is showing you the happiness and kind of the beautiful culmination, but you're not getting to see all the other stuff that's back there. So there's your sneak peek.
But that's the performance of it. That's how art modeling is so much like theater, because in theater there's that the show must go on idea of like, there's so much drama behind the drama. And I feel like with art modeling, before the pandemic, I definitely felt like there was an aspect of performance where you come in and you stand on a model stand, you don't know anybody in the room, and you're there to perform for the group or the individual or whatever the situation is. And there's a bit of a script to that performance in terms of what the needs of the class are, but there's a lot of improvisation too. And I feel like when we approached art modeling online, we didn't really have a discussion about like how to do it as a performance, but we had a lot of discussions about what aspects of it we were comfortable with and what aspects of it we were uncomfortable with. Because posing online, while we're used to being in an intimate or vulnerable environment, we're used to being vulnerable in an intimate space or in a public space. A classroom can be both public and intimate. And now we're in our own spaces, and that's usually like a closed door. Like I don't know about you guys, but I've never had an artist into my home to draw. Like that's my home is my personal life. It's not.
Yeah, that's
I
an
don't- I
interesting
just-
point, Sheba. Same.
And
Well, almost. I once did a photo shoot in my side yard, but yeah,
I've done a
versus
couple
these
of photo
online
shoots.
sessions.
yeah, not
Yeah.
in my bedroom. Well, I didn't do any online session. Well, I did
Yeah.
one in my bedroom. That was but so trying to carve a space out, and plus of course my partner was working at home, so I had to find a space where we could both be using the internet and not interfering with each other's meetings and making noise at each other.
Yeah.
And my cat.
Yes,
and-
cats.
There were people who wanted to see our space, and most of us, it's like, no, I didn't go through all the trouble of setting this up. This is what I want to share with you. I don't want to share my bedroom. I don't want to share, my dining room that's a mess because I've been setting up for all my sessions, and so everything is shoved over there. Like, no, like I'm not inspired by it, or I'm minimally inspired by it.
Minimally.
We've created spaces where we can perform, where we can feel
Right,
comfortable with,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
posing.
online sessions definitely have more of a performance feel because we're
Yeah.
setting up everything. And there's the tech aspect.
Mhm.
There are so many things that we can talk about. I'm just
Yeah,
at 8:35.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you're willing to stay in a little longer, just to answer a few of the questions that
Sure, certainly.
Sure.
are in the
Yeah.
chat. And, it was interesting to hear you use the word vulnerable, because I just want to say that the vulnerability comes from both ends too, those of
You
us.
and
who-
I have talked about that, Jill. So
Yeah.
maybe next time we'll have an artist and a model artist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of Martin's first comments at the very beginning of the evening, about his first time drawing a model and how terrifying that was. And I remember that too. And it doesn't go away, the vulnerability of putting the work out there, sharing it is always there. But anyway, there is a question. Some of the questions that are in the chat, I think you all answered a little bit as you continue to talk. But there's a question early on asking if you can spend a moment describing the exhibit in DC that you're involved with, what it's about, et cetera, what your involvement is with it.
You want me to start with that, or you want to start with that? So
Um,
two of
either
us
one of
are
us.
involved.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start with it, Sheba. That's fine.
So thank you for bringing that up. I was going to look at the chat, but I have a lot of things going on my screen right now. Sorry. But so actually the exhibit in DC right now is called The Woman in White, a tribute to Hefferman, Joanna Hefferman, and Whistler. So Joanna Hefferman was one of Whistler's primary model, and the model who posed for the woman in white, which later became Symphony in White #1. And if you do go to see the exhibit, if you're local in the DC area, the exhibit is at the National Gallery of Art on the East Wing on the mezzanine level. And it is up through October 1st, I
October
believe.
10th.
5th, okay.
10th.
10? 1
Yes.
0? Oh,
1
okay.
0.
1 0, not 0 1. Yeah. So you can see all three, Symphony 1, 2, and 3. Hefferman is flanked by herself and another model. It's not just about Symphony in White, it's about the extent of the working relationship that Heffernan and Whistler had. And there is an extensive catalog of work that the National Gallery has brought together in collaboration with, I'm going to get it wrong, but the main curator is from Scotland.
Yes.
And I can't remember her name. Apologize. Okay.
I know. I'm trying to look for the.
Anyways, our involvement with it was, so Jalene and I are involved in that along with 3 other models, and they put together a community committee where they're seeking advice and input on their presentation of
Yeah,
and impact of the exhibit itself.
I'll pop in
They-
real quick. They're started doing community advisory committees, and I believe we're the second one.
Yes.
So
there's-
the goal with that is to find like real people who are alive and experiencing things today to help bring like a more modern perspective to some of the pieces, and also a real world perspective to some of the exhibits that they're doing, so that voices that normally don't get heard are getting heard, are getting recognized.
that's
Mhm.
that's our we I mean, to be honest and clear, we did have to sign an NDA, so there's not a lot more that we can actually discuss. We do encourage you to go see the exhibit, and you'll see the fruit of that collaboration, and those many discussions we had with them is on the walls, along with the paintings, a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end. And if you want to have an experience where you're interacting with the exhibit in a unique way, they are doing a gallery night on September 8th after hours. There's more information about that on the National Gallery's website. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and I'm
To
searching.
build on your plug, oh, I'm sorry, but it just your plug for Saturday, your theme is built on that
Yes.
show, right?
Thank you, Jill.
We are
Yes.
taking our inspiration, as we do, from the artwork that our ancestor model inspired in the past. So trying to bring that back full circle.
Yes, so we're doing an homage to the Woman in White, which is the DC AMC's Models in White, which are not all women, we're people. But yes, Models in White with a whole wide variety of our white fashion choices and what those could involve. So if it's okay, I'll put a link for that as well.
Please do. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
And I'm going to just ask one more question. And the reason I'm only going to ask one more is that Sheba is still at the studio school where she has been working all day long. So she's had a very long day. She is sitting at the front desk at the school. So she needs to go home. But from Janice, how might a model mentally prepare for a really demanding instructor or student, similar to a comedian preparing for a heckler in the audience?
That's a good question.
I'm going to dive into that one, and then feel free to interrupt me, other models. One thing is having a sense of your boundaries before you go in. And it doesn't have to be very aggressive or anything, but having a sense of your boundaries and your comfort level, and understanding that you're going to have to communicate these. But there are positive ways that you can do this. So I'll get people who want particular poses, and my body's like, we are not doing that pose. So I'll explain to them, I like that idea, but my body's not able to accommodate that. But I can give you something really similar. Like, what do you think about this one? And usually by being proactive versus just like negative and reactionary, but being proactive and giving options and choices that are within my comfort zone, there's usually something that even kind of the most challenging people will find to be inspiring.
I don't know that I really I mean, I have coffee. If I know that I'm going to have a particularly challenging day, or
You
if
have
I
coffee?
know that I'm going into a session that I will find challenging, I make sure that I have coffee before I go in.
Mhm.
I think it was, I don't know, I'm gonna get it wrong. I'll just say, I think it was an instructor, because I know I'm gonna paraphrase it wrong. It was like, it was something about, I only heard part of the conversation because I was on the stand and I'm not always paying attention to what's happening, but it was like something about being really depressed and then, you know, going through the day and then realizing like, oh, I didn't have coffee this morning. Like, so I try to make sure that I maybe give myself time to have coffee, and then that really helps my mood. Or if I know that I'm going to go into something, sometimes something just happens and you don't really expect it, and it can set off and make it cause a challenge.
I also remind myself that I only have to see them like twice a year, and that I can get through this. It will be totally fine because I don't have to see them probably for another 6 months. So just smile.
Yeah. Well,
sometimes I have an issue where I know it's going to be a long pose and there won't be any gestures. So I'll go to the restroom and do a series of, you know, stretches and quick gestures myself, to give myself that time, because I really, in the DC area, there's a lot of driving, and my body needs a little bit of like stretching and movement before I get settled into a long pose sometimes. And so if I know I'm going into a class where I'm not going to get that chance, or a session, it's just, we're just going to go right into a long pose. Like I need to take a moment and go somewhere else, go to another room and do some stretches.
Well, this has been truly incredible. And, you know, like I said in the introduction, we often have, you know, the opportunity to listen to conversations between painters, you know, between, you know, studio artists. But I don't know that in all my years of doing this, that I've ever had the experience of listening to a conversation between a group of model artists. And it has just been, you know, so enlightening and so fascinating. And we just appreciate so much all of what you have shared. And mostly we really appreciate your work, because, you know, we couldn't do our work, like you said, without each other. So it is a collaboration. It is a very symbiotic kind of, you know, relationship. And what you have done for all of us, you know, in person and during these last 2 years in particular, by getting up online and allowing us to continue, you know, this collaboration is just appreciated more than you can imagine. Sheba, you've been working a long day. Sarah, you are camping, and it is unbelievable that you were able to, you know, hotspot your way into so, you know, I think we are going to just say thank you and call it a night. And
Jill, can I interrupt and say something about this one image and one other image real quick? Just
yeah. Yeah.
This image that's up right now, this is from an online session that several of our DCAMC models participated in. It was a benefit for Ukraine, and echoing everything that Sheba said, as far as our local community, doing this was such a wonderful experience, connecting with our more than local community out there. This is Leon Henson, is the artist of this piece. And this was a wonderful thing to be a part of that would not have been possible without online sessions.
Yep.
It was a chance for us to use our creative expression, to do something that we could do to make a difference and to help. And that was really awesome. And also along that note, Sheba, can you share Sue's image of me and Avid?
Oh, it might be really close. Nope, it's not.
There's a piece by Dylan.
I know I need to go home, but really quick, this is an example of what it was like before the pandemic. Well, we're still kind of doing the same thing, but Jalene and I posed for 2 separate sessions. We didn't know we were going to be in a piece of art together. And yet we ended up modeling together, because that's how this artist, Phyllis Mays, ended up composing us. So we did end up posing together sometimes like that, but not knowing until we saw the final piece of work. Whereas
so fun.
So I'll find your other piece. Was you?
So
There
this
it is.
is, again, along those same lines. I'm sensing a running theme here. This is an image of me and Avid, who's another DCMC model, and the artist is Sue Zhang. And this is, I had not met Avid before doing online sessions, although we're both local to the DC area. And we collaborated within this session. We came up with the concept and we planned poses, and we created this amazing thing that we put forth out there for the artists to join us in this space. And Sue was one of the artists that has consistently joined our sessions. She's over in China. This would not have been possible in the regular, like in our, before doing online sessions. And so our community has not only been locally, but has extended through models that we've connected with and through artists that we've connected with all over the world, and have supported each other. And it's just been amazing.
And amazing for us.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share.
And I just want to thank you all for joining us.